Comic Timing is member supported by listeners like you over at patreon.com/comic timing. We thank you very much for your continued support of the show, no matter which way you give it. We have been doing this Patreon for a couple of years now, and it really went into high gear just about a year ago now. And you folks have been showing your support for as little as $1 a month. You get some behind-the-scenes audio. You get some exclusive audio from Chris and manga reviews and stuff like that. You also get my diary entries and whatever else we could throw your way, whether it be articles, whether it be just talking and having a good time. And we thank you very much for your continued support over at patreon.com/comic timing. Hey there, folks. My name's Ian Levinstein, and welcome to a special episode of Comic Timing. So I am recording this on May 1st, 2025, which is our 19th anniversary of the show. Holy crap. It's hard to believe that we started this thing 19 years ago and it's been running relatively smoothly ever since. I mean, you know, give or take a couple of months here or there in between releases, which has happened a couple of times, but we've been pretty regular at least the last year, and we're hoping to continue to be regular for the foreseeable future. We don't have a full release planned for this week, just because I've had a lot of stuff going on, and gathering all the troops together would be a bit of a task last minute. I am, however, appearing on a podcast in the not-too-distant future. Matthew Bergen is having me on his podcast called Wrestling Conversations. We're actually recording that later today. Not sure when that's going to air, but I will let you guys know when that does indeed air, when it is released, and we may very well syndicate it here. I'll figure that out when the time comes, but I am recording today, just, not a full episode of Comic Timing. But I figured a decent amount of you are new-ish to the show over the past couple of months and maybe even years. So I'm going to re-air something that became a lot more relevant over the past year or so, as now the people that guested on this very episode are regular contributors to Comic Timing. Back in 2016, we celebrated the 10-year anniversary of Comic Timing. And to celebrate that, we had on the show Shane, Murdough, and Chris Eberle. It was myself and Brent Casina, and we recorded that entire episode on collecting comics. Now, obviously, some of the stuff that we talk about will have changed since this very episode aired. As I think back then I was still at least partially collecting single issues. I've since given that up entirely for digital. Brent has as well, outside of collected editions and occasional singles here and there. But before we do get to the re-airing of this episode, some stuff did go down more recently that will affect collecting comics. As you may have heard on the last full episode that we released, with me and Murd, it was our previews episode. I had breaking news on that very episode that Diamond had officially been purchased by Alliance Entertainment. And then the shit hit the fan. Pretty much right after I released that episode, Alliance Entertainment completely bailed on their agreement to purchase Diamond. As part of that bailing, they then went ahead and sued Diamond, as they firmly believe that Diamond Distributors did not tell them that the agreement with Wizards of the Coast that they had for Alliance Game Distributors was set to expire. And they attempted to renegotiate, they attempted to have them continue with Alliance Game Distributors, and that is not going to be the case. As of April 21st, when a video conference was held between Alliance Entertainment, Wizards of the Coast, and representatives of Diamond Comics, including Tyson, Hirsch, and Gorin. In that conference, Wizard of the Coast presidents John Haidt and Vice President of Global Revenue and Wizard Play Network Brian Trunk explained that Wizard of the Coast has decided in December of 2024 to terminate the distribution agreement because sales to Alliance game distributors had declined by over 8% over the previous 4 years. During a time of increasing sales overall, the complaint alleged. Extensions were granted through April 30th to assist in the bankruptcy case and to induce the debtors to grant Wizard of the Coast critical vendor status. That did not happen. That completely fell apart. And so Wizard of the Coast is no longer going to be distributed by Alliance. That was one of the main reasons why Alliance Entertainment was purchasing Diamond. They were much more focused on the game side. When they realized that they were not going to have one of the biggest, obviously Dungeons and Dragons, Magic, and a bunch of other stuff, they decided that it was no longer worth it. So they completely fell out. In the last week or two, Diamond itself has faced further issues. For one, they had not properly filed their Chapter 11 paperwork. They had not been keeping track of their funds and submitting that to the Chapter 11 people to ensure that that remained that way. Their debtor then attempted to switch them over to Chapter 7, which would have been straight up liquidation. Had that happened, Diamond very well would straight up no longer exist, and they would have to liquidate their assets and terminate immediately. They swore they would have everything filed the way that they needed it to be filed, and that they had a backup backer and backup purchaser for that matter. And that officially went through as of April 30th. The backup suitor that Murdough and I discussed are now the straight up purchasers. So a Alliance, pun slightly intended there, as now they are going to own Alliance game distributors. But Canadian distributor Universal Distribution acquired the assets of Alliance game distributors, and NECA and WizKids parent company Ad Populum acquired the assets of Diamond Comic Distributors, Diamond Book Distributors, Diamond Select Toys and Collectibles, Collectible Grading Authority, and other related assets. Diamond UK is separate from this process. They do not currently have a buyer. So we are not sure whether or not Diamond as is just going to revert to Diamond UK, whether or not Titan may try to repurchase Diamond UK, as once upon a time it was theirs, and then they sold it to Diamond. That was a couple of years back. But representatives of Diamond, Universal, and Ad Populum released statements in conjunction with the announcement. We are pleased that the court has approved Universal and Ad Populum's combined bid. Our priority during this process has been to minimize distribution to publishers, retailers, our employees, and comics and games fans everywhere. This expansion into the U.S. market through our acquisition of Alliance Game Distributors marks a pivotal moment for Universal Distribution. Universal Distribution's president and CEO, Angelo Exarchus, said, I do not think I pronounced that right, but I'm not going to try to. We're committed to building strong, transparent partnership and ensuring that Alliance continues to serve as a reliable and resilient link in the supply chain. So what's the conclusion of this? Well, in layman's terms, Diamond got everything it wanted. They wanted this to be the winning bid in the first place. And then Alliance Entertainment swooped in and made this outstanding bid that was hard to resist, quite literally, because it was bigger than any of the other bids. Then Diamond was like, well, wait, in the end, this is kind of bigger, so let's go with them instead. Alliance was like, nah, man, we're in this for the long haul. Then they found out that Wizards of the Coast was not included in the gaming part of it, and they were not in for the long haul and withdrew entirely, and Diamond got the buyers that they 100% wanted. On top of all that, Diamond has been transparent that comic book companies should expect prices to raise thanks to tariffs. And now they're partially going to be owned by a Canadian company. So what happens in Canada stays in Canada? No, that doesn't make any sense. But either way, prices are going to get higher. And considering that this company is coming out of potential liquidation and Chapter 11 and having to move around their finances and all that. And small companies were very much relying on Diamond making it out of this and still being affordable for them to distribute their comics through. This is most definitely going to continue to be an ongoing situation here. And whether or not this is even going to wind up being beneficial at all to comic book companies remains to be seen. And whether or not Diamond's even going to make it through this, because yeah, they have to raise their prices across the board. That's just the way it is right now in the world. And being bought by a Canadian company, I'm sure, is not actually helping matters in that situation. But at least they got bought by somebody, and at least Free Comic Book Day is still probably going to continue in one form or another past this year. But I guess we won't find that out until next year officially. This is obviously an ongoing situation, and we will have further details on this as it progresses. But pretty much as a comic book podcast, we had to give you at least a little bit of an update here, even if it's not on the full episode. I'm hoping to put the wheels together to try to have somebody that understands this way more than I do to hopefully let you folks understand it. But if not, I will continue to be in layman's terms, and we'll continue to progress this as well on future episodes, whether it be Blue Team, Gold Team, or anywhere in between. But we thank you very much for sticking with us for 19 years of the show. This is also kind of the 1-year anniversary of Comic Timing getting back into full gear here with my various collaborators and stuff like that, going from being released 2 or 3 times a year to being released multiple times in a month. And we're now actually approaching our 250th episode, which should have happened years ago, but it didn't for various reasons, and part of it laziness on my part, and part of it on the fact that we had other obligations and stuff like that. I do want to also congratulate Comic News Insider for reaching 1,600 episodes. That happened this very week as well. And I've known Jimmy Aquino for years. Joe Gonzalez, his regular contributor. Joe and Jimmy were the tag team when it started, and then Joe went off and did other things, but he's still very much involved with CNI. They put out their 1600th episode this week, along with my good friend Charlito. Charlito Greca, obviously known for Indie Spinner Rack and various other things over the years. He joined Joe and Jimmy for that 1600th episode. Do check that out over at comicnewsinsider.com if you're interested. I would also like to thank Charlito for the absolutely amazing print that he put out that was released. Comic Geek Speak had their 20th anniversary. I will give them acknowledgement of that here on the show. Charlito put out a fantastic print that honored our contributions to the show over the years. Everybody's on there. Shane, Chris, Murd, myself, as well as the original CGS folks, Brian, Peter, Kevin, Matt, Jamie, of course. And the list goes on and on of people who have contributed to that show in one way or the other. But Charlie put out a fan-damn-tastic print that you can find online if you look for it, whether it be on, Comic Geek Speak socials or stuff like that. I really can't thank him enough for including us in that process and just straight up, being a cool dude. So thank you very much for that. Enough preamble. As I said, I am re-releasing our episode from 2016. This was episode 179 of Comic Timing, and it features myself, Chris Eberle, Shane Kelly, Adam Murdough, and Mr. Brent Cassina as well. As it won't say it in the preamble for the episode, or post-amble for the episode, you can find Brent's stuff over at BK's Bullets on YouTube, and you can find regular releases of Comic Timing, usually in video form, over at our YouTube at Comic Timing Podcast. You can also find us at facebook.com/Comic Timing. And we have our Comic Timing fan group as well that continues to get tons of posts and tons of content over there. So thank you folks for keeping us relevant and running over the years. And of course, our blue sky is at Comic Timing. And I'm sure I'm going to reference Twitter at the end of this episode because this is an old release. Probably will mention Tumblr too. How about them apples? But either way, please do enjoy this re-release of Comic Timing. And we'll be back next year, probably for a much bigger episode, as we'll be celebrating our 20th year. Sure, we're going to celebrate that in one form or another, and I'm sure we'll also have a full release for episode 250 in a couple of weeks. So enjoy episode 179 for those of you who haven't listened to it, or those of you who haven't listened to it in many years. Good times. Because there's always time for...
This is Batman.
Comic Timing.
Of the
Stop screwing it up.
He's a proud member of the Comics
Podcast Network.
That's what it does. Because I'm Batman.
Print it. Welcome to episode 179 of Comic Timing, a comics podcast devoted to the average comic book fan from the average comic book fan. Join in as Brent Cassina, rotating panel of guests, and myself, Ian Levesine, discuss whatever comes to mind for 10 years here on Comic Timing. What better way to celebrate 10 years of the show than with the guys who in some ways inspired it? The Comic Geek Speak crew joins us for an all-out conversation about collecting comics. Because what else do we do? Here now, Comic Timing. Hey there, folks. My name's Ian Levesine, and welcome to episode 179 of Comic Timing. The 8-year or so co-host Cassina is on the call with me as well. What's up, Brent?
Oh, now we're counting? Thanks.
Hey, you're the one who brought it up in the pre-show.
That's true. That's my own fault.
You survived, man. Let's
I did.
You're the one who stuck around the longest. You're the one who could put up with me the longest.
And in my tenure, you did bring back ex-co-hosts, I think, to try and rule me out.
Not to rule you out. Come on,
or to
please.
try and scare me off that my position was going to get.
It was to make you feel better. That's all it is, man. Yeah. And I'm sipping a Shiner birthday beer for this lovely occasion here, as I figured that would be appropriate. And yeah, as I said in the opening, we're joined by the Comic Geek Speak crew returning to the show, Mr. Adam Murdough. Adam.
Hey.
How's it going, brother?
Yeah, going just fine. Ian, how are you guys?
Pretty damn well. Nice day here in Brooklyn. Shane Kelly returns to the show as well. Shane. Hello. Nice to have both of you guys in the same room to get this thing going the right way. And in Jersey, calling in via Skype, Chris Eberle. Chris.
Good evening. Thanks for having me on. It's an honor, sir.
It's my pleasure, man. I've been wanting to have you on for a while, and I figure what better topic to have you on to discuss than comic book collecting with your wide history there, both in retail and, comic books themselves. So
looking forward to it.
Looking forward to it indeed. You know the deal, as usual, sponsored by DCBS, Discount Comic Book Service at dcbservice.com, where you can get as many discounts as you can fit under your hat. 50% off of Marvel and DC hardcovers and trades, 40% off of Marvel, DC, Image, and Dark Horse single issues, bundles, so many bundles to be named. We're at the end of the month, so I'm not going to tell you anything specific. But yeah, you can go ahead and get some great deals there. Check them out at dcbservice.com. I'm going to steal your guy's shtick for a second here, because we're talking comic book collecting, and even if you guys might have somehow brought it up on the show before, or your own show, which you have 800 times, how did you first get into comic books? We'll start there and we'll meander forward. Chris, since you're a newbie to Comic Timing, how about you start us off?
Honored, my friend. I started via animated series. So growing up watching reruns of the classic 60s Spider-Man series, which I was watching in the late 70s and early 80s, watching reruns of the Adam West Batman show in that same time period. All this was on TV. And also seeing reruns of the classic barely moving limbs 60s Marvel animated series, which was also being put on reruns at that time when I was growing up. That got me interested in wanting to read comics, and from almost the moment I could read, between stopping at rest stops on family trips or going to flea markets because there were no comic shops around me yet, or getting books from my cousins, I started to develop a pile of various and sundry titles. And I was drawn particularly to the Marvel characters, but I also was checking out DC as well. And I remember I was on a family vacation, I want to say to Bermuda, one of the Caribbean islands in the late 70s or very early 80s, and my parents bought me a copy of Marvel Tales that reprinted a Jerry Conway, Ross Andrew Amazing Spider-Man story from the 70s. It was issue 128, featuring the Vulture. And my father read me the story, and he did all the different voices in character. And I was completely smitten. And here we are, decades later, and I'm so smitten that I've been involved in the sadomasochistic pursuit of being a comic shop retailer. So that tells you right away how much I love the comic book medium.
You gotta love it to make it your craft.
Yes. So here we are.
Adam, how about you?
Okay, I like to say that I was shanghaied into it, actually. Well, I did read a few comics as a kid. My dad picked up a few random issues of like old Whitman comics, Disney or Bugs Bunny comics at yard sales, and I read them, loved them, read them until their covers fell off. But superhero comic, I was kind of balked at the superhero comics because they always seemed kind of, even back in the 80s, a little dark and threatening. And I think of images of like the X-Men. There's this woman with a mohawk and a guy with knives coming out of his hands. It was all a little scary to me, actually. And eventually I convinced myself that comics were silly and childish and focused on reading prose novels instead. But then, junior high rolled around. Okay, I had been friends with our friend Matt, another CGS co-host, Matt, and he and I got to know each other in third grade. He had read comics all his life. He was a big Spider-Man fan. But he never tried to get me to read comics until, a couple of years later. I think he decided he wanted a friend who read comics with whom he could talk about these things. So he started, slipping me issues of this or that, and I basically rebuffed him most of the time. When we got to be in, say, 7th grade, I think that's when the tipping point was for me. He started showing me his Marvel Universe Series 1 and 2 trading cards. Just showing me the little facts and figures about all the different characters. I got to get a sense of the diversity of different personality types and power types, and just seeing them as reduced to statistic form was a little less threatening to me than seeing the actual stories on paper, which is what put me off when I was a kid.
Right.
So I sort of eased myself in that way. And then one weekend, he and I were down at my family's house on the Jersey Shore, just to hang out for the weekend. He had brought a small box of comics along, and I finally was talked into trying one of them. It's an issue of Walt Simonson's Fantastic Four run. I don't know the issue number. Matt gave me that copy eventually as a memento of my downfall. And it has a picture of a Triceratops on the cover ripping a Fantastic Four costume apart in his jaw. And I think the blurb was 4 No More or something like that. And I just picked up that comic, got sucked into it. I was supposed to be taking a shower. My dad came upstairs to knock on the door to find out why I hadn't gotten into the shower yet. He found me in there naked as a jaybird with this Fantastic Four issue right in front of me. And so began a lifelong problem with 4-color substance abuse. Successfully dragged me in. This was 1992. I was 13. We were 13. So it was the Infinity War crossover from Marvel. That was the first comic that I bought for myself. Then I jumped over to X-Men. Then I tried some other things around Marvel, Excalibur, Darkhawk, stuff like that. And then a couple years later, I tried DC, and there was no turning back.
I know it's not entirely true, but in my head now, I just have that. I learned it from you, Dad.
Max, who use comics, have friends who use comics.
Shane, how about you, buddy?
Well, when I was younger, I was probably, G.I. Joe came out in 82, I think. And I was on issue 21 was the first one I saw. No, 20, the first one I saw. So that's probably around 84, pretty close to 83, 84 time frame. My family used to go to a hoagie shop in Pottstown. Gosh, even forget the name of it now. Across the street, I saw a poster for Spider-Man, Batman, and some other fun stuff that I think would be neat. Had no idea what was inside the shop, but asked my dad when he was picking up hoagies if I could walk over and see what's in there. And lo and behold, it was a comic store. And I saw, at that time, I was watching the G.I. Joe cartoon, getting some of the toys. I guess it was just the miniseries that was out at that time. Boy, I can't quite remember. But my first issue of anything that I had, of regular, now, like Adam said, I had things that my parents would pick up every now and then, Whitman comics, a Bugs Bunny here or a Batman there from the grocery store. But to actually get something from a comic store, my dad picked up G.I. Joe number 21 from that comic store across the street from the hoagie shop one time. Mm-hmm. So when I saw it, I didn't buy anything. When I saw issue 20 in that store the first time, and about a month later or so, when my dad went over to get hoagies again, he had stopped in there and picked up a G.I. Joe book for me, and it was the Silent issue 21. And at first I thought, what is wrong with this? There's no words. Then slowly I started to read that, and I got into, because I would go to that comic store every month to look for a G.I. Joe book, got into some Batman, some Justice League, some Spider-Man, and that's where the ball started rolling. That was my first experience in a comic store. I was, like I said, 10 or 12 years old, 84, yeah, probably closer to 12. And that's where it started for me. And from there, it just skyrocketed through the next 4 or 5 years. And then I really got heavily into reading comics by that time.
That's how you know the art was excellent on that issue, because to start with a silent issue and not be like, what the hell is this, and never pick up another comic. Like, did they forget the word bubbles? You know?
Well, yeah, I figured they forgot something, but I still followed a story. It was still great artwork. I loved Snake Eyes and Storm Shadows, so that was awesome. Mm-hmm. I wondered if every book was like this that they did, or if, like me being naive about it. I had no idea what happened, but I still enjoyed it. And I looked over that issue countless times over the next year, even until I really started to get more of a collection going. But yeah, I don't have that issue anymore. I got rid of that issue a long time ago. I don't even think I sold it properly. I probably gave it away or something back when I was shifting collections around. But yeah, that was really something.
That issue is a great example of what a master craftsman Larry Hama is, because he did the pencils, the breakdowns of that issue. Yeah. So it shows his skills as a sequential storyteller. And one of the things, Shane, they're releasing is just in the April's previews. They're doing an IDW G.I. Joe Artist Edition, and the silent issue will be in there.
That's cool.
I saw.
And Ian, before I forgot to give credit. What also got me into comics, and Shane will appreciate this, as will Murd, the Power Records from the late 70s.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
Were also another avenue that brought me into the hobby.
Nice.
Between reruns of the Batman 60s show, Super Friends cartoons, the Power Records, and G.I. Joe stuff, man, that was my gateway.
And my other media gateway was the Batman animated series, which was going on in the early 90s.
Okay, yeah.
And, well, Brent, I mean, I know you I think, God, it's probably been at least 6 or 7 years since you've told your how you got into comics story on the show. So refresh everybody's memory.
Let's recap. Been a Batman fan since my 5th birthday, where my parents hired somebody to dress as Michael Keaton Batman. Still got pictures. I should post them someday.
Yeah, do it.
Batman animated series, basically, pretty much. First comic I remember reading, I've read some more before, but the first ones I remember was going to Toys R Us and getting like a 5-pack grab bag. And it was a number of the Night Quest and Night's End comics. I remember reading Legends of the Dark Knight 60, where Batman retakes the mantle from Jean Paul Valley, drawn by Barry Kitson. And I remember reading Batman 505, which kind of was the beginning of the Abattoir storyline with Jean Paul Valley in the Asbats costume, hence why I'm such a big Asbats Azrael fan. Those are the first comics I read. In fact, I ordered the Arkham Knight Azrael figure today. I was pretty happy about that.
Nice.
So yeah, that's a brief summary of how I got started. Well, downhill ever since.
Yeah, well, for me, it was actually waiting online for a movie at a now defunct, poor 40 out movie theater called the Kingsway, which actually, if you watch the show, I'm blanking on the name now all of a sudden because I'm trying to think of it. But the HBO show about the record industry that just finished airing.
Vinyl.
Vinyl, thank you. Yep. But Vinyl actually had a reference to the Kingsway movie theater in the first episode because the character was supposed to have grown up not too far from where I live here in Brooklyn. So that was a nice reference for me to relish in. Like, yeah, the Kingsway. Maybe we never forget. It's for freaking Walgreens now. But as I was growing up, that was my local movie theater. And I don't even remember what movie my mom and I were waiting online to see, but directly next to it was a small little comic shop called AAA Comics and Cards. And they eventually moved down the block and became a comic shop called Acme with more space, and eventually they closed, and they're not to be found anymore either. But I remember going in there and searching the racks and finding this comic with a shiny holofoil cover, because it was the 90s and half the comics had that. but it was Uncanny X-Men number 300. And that was my first comic that I remember. I mean, I'm sure I read like random Ninja Turtles comics off the, like drugstore rack or something like that beforehand. But it was John Romita Jr. art, and it was a story like almost in the middle of a story. Why it was at issue 300, I may never know, because it almost wrapped up a storyline. But it hooked me enough where I went back and I found older issues and got into Uncanny X-Men from there, and then eventually got into Spider-Man, somehow survived the Clone Saga, and here I am still reading comics to this day, and didn't run away screaming. So Adam and I got in around a similar time, and yet, people continue to say the 90s were a horrible era for comics, but it's still somebody's first era.
That's true.
Whether it was excellent all the time or not, it's still how you got in the door, and I'm glad that happened to be my time. But yeah, that's how I started there. Now, our collections are all huge in one way or the other. I know, Brent, you've gotten rid of most of your stuff, and now you've transitioned into digital and trades. But
I believe my digital collection's now just as big as my old hard copies were.
Wow, jeez. But about how big do you think the crux of your collection is, or was at its highest peak? Adam, I mean, you're about 10 years behind on your reading, but what would you guesstimate how many comics you actually own?
Ian, I just finished reorganizing my collection and putting it all into a database. I wish I had taken the time to count while I was doing that, but would have made good sense. But I'm positive it's somewhere in the 5 figures.
Jeez.
And I've got like
5 figures.
Yeah, I've got like 55 long boxes worth.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. If I had the space for that, I probably would be somewhere along your lines, man. But I'm running out of room in this apartment, and it's a 2-bedroom to begin with. So if I were to do that, I think I'd be sleeping on my boxes.
I'm all but doing that right now. And if Pants were here, he'd probably tell you the same.
Chris, I mean, how big was your collection, say, at its largest?
It frankly was never that large because, well, when I was active, before I was because I've been a retailer since 1999. So before I was a retailer, I was collecting comics vigorously, I'd say, from middle school through mid-high school. So I probably had maybe somewhere between 10 and 20 long boxes. And then I sold a lot of them to get money to buy trades because I wanted to – and this is this is back in the 90s, but I wanted to kind of phase out of getting more monthlies. Then when I went to college, I kind of rediscovered – getting comics again on a regular basis, and I started to vigorously buy floppies again. This is in the early 90s. And then when I opened my first shop in 99, whatever comics I had, I put them all in the inventory. And I since then, I don't actually collect any floppies just because anything I buy is for the store.
Right.
But I have an ever-expanding library of trades that I maintain. And I still have my beloved pile of comics that I mentioned earlier that my parents and cousins got me when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
So.
I still have some drawers full of comics that I need to clear out of my mom's place that quite literally is in my childhood dressers. When I upgraded into a larger dresser for when I was in my teens, I just wound up storing most of my comics in there, and God only knows what condition they're in at this point, but they're there.
That doesn't matter. They've been well loved.
Exactly. Yeah. Shane, what's your peak?
My peak was probably, I know it was at least 10,000, maybe just a little bit more than that. Over the last 10 years, I've gotten rid of about 6,000, maybe 7,000.
Okay.
I'm down to about 3,000 on average, and every year I seem to rotate some stuff out, new stuff in kind of stuff, kind of mentality to it. Even though I moved into a house that has a little bit bigger room for me to put this stuff in, I dedicated a certain amount of space to my trades and comics. And every year I have to clean out some trades and figure out what I want to keep because I'm not going beyond what these set of shelves has to offer. This is my space and this is where I got to stick it. Anything more than that, I got to take stuff out and put new stuff in. That's just what I decided to do. I don't want it to overtake the room anymore. With so many things going digital, my philosophy was always not so much to keep them because of value, but to keep them because of rereading. Well, now that so much is out there digitally, I decided to get rid of a lot of stuff that I have no interest to reread right away.
Right.
Because I can find it somewhere. And if I can't find it out there in the ether, there's a bigger problem with the world than me just being able to not read a comic.
Cheaply,
because that would
too.
mean the whole internet would have collapsed by that time.
Yeah.
But there are certain things I will always keep. For me, it's Justice League. So the bulk of my comics that I have left have some kind of tie-in with Justice League, whether it be All-Star Squadron, Young All-Stars, Infinity Inc., JSA, guest appearances. That's just what the bulk of my collection is now, is all Justice League related type titles in some fashion.
Yeah, I have the complete run from issue 1 until the end of the Ultimate Universe of all the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, whether it be the Peter Parker or whether it be the Miles Morales, and I don't really ever see myself parting with that.
It's a great series.
Yeah, and I'm still glad that I saw this on the shelf that day and was like, wait, what's this with this weird digital cover? And yet I picked it up, and it turned out to be the best Spider-Man I read for years after that. So I got really lucky with that, and it's a keepsake I'll hold on to for quite some time.
Yeah.
Brent, what was your peak?
Well, my peak, I had 12 short boxes full of single issues, and I currently have 4 shelves on my bookshelf of trades. That's kind of pretty much stayed the same since I moved out of my parents' house. Digitally, I just looked it up, and I have 3,007 digital issues, nice. Whether it be trades or singles or whatever. Most of that has come from 99-cent sales. Mm-hmm. I buy Walking Dead. I have Compendium 1 and 2, and then I buy Walking Dead twice a year. Twice a year they have 99-cent sales where I catch up for 6 issues or whatever I'm missing and go from there. Most of them, I don't buy trades digitally unless they're under $5 pretty much. So I'm really eyeing the sales now because I'm kind of most interested in getting the things back that I want to reread that I really enjoyed reading, kind of back in my heyday, which was, mid-2000s kind of era comic book reading. The stuff going on now is not so much really my thing, but that's what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would probably assume that at my peak, I probably had about 15 or 16 long boxes worth of stuff, just because, none of them were really in long boxes. That's just it. I was like one of those kids that was like as resourceful as humanly possible when it came to the small amount of space I had, because I grew up in a 1.5 bedroom apartment. Mm. I was Harry Potter under the stairs, quite literally. My bed was directly adjacent to the refrigerator. I fell asleep to the hum of the refrigerator every night because that's the way I lived in Brooklyn, and that's how I grew up. But I still made room for the comics, and whether it be in that toy chest that I mentioned, whether it be in a dresser, whether it be in boxes that I could find room for, or on a bookshelf. I had an entire bookshelf full of vertical stacks of comics, not horizontal but vertical, just filling an entire bookshelf for a while. Like, it'd be nice if I used it for actual books, but no, it's just stacks of comics because that's the way I lived, and that's the way it went for then. And now I have a whole bunch of short boxes worth of stuff, but I'm starting to trim things because I, just like Shane, and Brent and Chris, there's stuff that I know I'm going to read again, and then there's stuff that I just don't need to keep. And I would like to believe there's people out there who would rather be reading my comics than I am. So
a lot of them ended up on our inventory, so I thank you for that.
And there'll be more, trust me. Not quite yet, but there is a further calling.
We're full up at the moment anyway.
That's perfectly
okay.
fine. Yeah, it's sometime probably in the fall. I'll wind up messaging you again, seeing what's going on. But yeah, no, that it's just one of those things where you got to rotate them out, and it actually brings up a question that I wanted to ask everybody on the call: just how we've seen collecting change since we started to, through the 90s, through the 2000s to now, with the way the comic book industry itself has changed. Just how different collecting is now than it was when we were younger. And Brent, I'll start it with you because, again, you've almost entirely gone digital and trades at this point. But how else have you seen a change amongst fellow comic fans and yourself?
I don't know. I feel like, unfortunately, I got a shop within 5 miles of my house after I went digital. I probably would have stayed physical or hard copy, whatever you want to call it, a little bit longer if that comic shop had opened up 2-3 years prior. Regardless of whether I was using DCBS or a service like Heroes Corner or whatever. But I really think the way I've seen things now is that people are spending less and less as comics get more expensive.
Oh, yeah.
I certainly have. I'm looking at the Secret Wars hardcover and, or even the digital version. They want $40 for, I know it's 9 issues, but damn, it just seems like a lot.
That is. Yeah.
So I'll probably wait for that to go on sale for a long, long time. It won't be for a couple of years probably, but I just feel like the added expense of comics and the multitude of things that are going on, I find myself wanting to play video games or watch Hulu more than I do reading some comics now. But that might have to be with the ones I'm currently reading. But I think the price has pretty much knocked a large portion of the hobby out, and I'm glad to see DC doing things like starting their Rebirth line with $2.99 comics. I hope it stays that way.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate you see Marvel at the same time going to a lot of $4.99 books in a month for whatever event they're going on. I think Civil War 2 or whatever. It's pretty unfortunate, but hopefully it pays off for DC in that people are paying more attention if price is really the king right now.
Yeah, and if it somehow does catapult DC back to the top, and if they stay there for more than a month, then the industry works that way. If they see a trend works, then hopefully they'll realize that it's working for them. So perhaps it'll work for me, and maybe we'll see prices go back down as opposed to higher up.
I mean, I remember buying 52 when it came out, and they were making a big deal that was going to be $2.50 an issue, because it was a weekly book. And then everything, moved. Everything else was $2.99 or something like that, and then it moved up to $3.99. And I remember buying comics for $1.99 or $2.25 at some point. And it's astonishing how fast the comics have gone up in price just in the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
I guess comparably with older stages in comic books where it's 5 cents here, 5 cents there. But I know that with inflation and things like that, it's that has a huge impact on how much the prices go up for companies and things like that.
I remember back in the day, I picked up, I think it was Fantastic Four Confidential, if I remember correctly. It was a 99-cent series that Marvel wound up putting out basically because it was 99 cents. Because at that point, comics were about $1.99, and this one was still 99 cents. It said right there on the top of it, like, okay, so whether you're good or not, you're only 99 cents, I'll buy you. Shane, how about you?
Boy, when I was, when I first started getting those G.I. Joe books, they were 60 cents a piece.
Wow.
What made me go to mail order, which I was never a fan of up until price impacted me so much. I started mail order comics because price was getting too much, and I wanted to get a good discount to try and get more books for what I was spending.
Right.
And in recent months, I would say the last year, as prices continue to go up, what I would, let's see, how was it? Cover price the comics were when I started ordering my comics online have now reached the plateau where the discount is the same as what comics cost when I first started. I'm like, well, wait a minute. That's totally defeating the purpose of what I tried to do anyway. Plus, what I like and don't like has changed drastically. So now I'm back to what do I do, trying to cut out things to make it more cost effective for me. Having DC do this $2.99 thing is huge because, like everyone said, things aren't going to continue to go up at this point with that. $2.99 is a great price compared to where they were heading. I'm more inclined to give things a try at $2.99 today than at $3.99 or more, as annual specials miniseries often cost that. As far as what I've seen in collecting over the years, again, I always kept everything as much as I could because I thought I'd need to reread it from just a floppy. With the whole digital age coming in, I've had a huge swing of things going digital. I've read in the past 2 years a lot of books digitally. I love that Marvel gives a digital code with almost every single one of their books.
Yeah.
That's a great buying point for me because I'm more inclined to buy a book from Marvel. Whether I read the floppy or not is almost irrelevant because I'll take the digital code and then either give away or resell that Marvel book, yet I still have a copy to read at some point.
Yeah.
I have some DC stuff on digital, but not nearly as much as Marvel, yet I still am more of a DC fan overall. I mean, that's the way I've been my whole life. I've read a lot of Marvel, but I love DC, and I think that's something that DC is missing the boat on is the digital age of things, the way that Marvel is doing it with giving a digital code to everything. I'm just more inclined to buy books that way so I can get both versions at the same time. Almost like when I buy a Blu-ray. I love seeing a Blu-ray, a DVD, and a digital copy, man. That's a holy grail for me right there, is just to find that trifecta. I still have DVD players that I use. I love the Blu-ray player I have, and I love watching stuff on iPads and my phone.
Yep.
But boy, if I can find something when it first comes out cheap, that's when I'm going to buy it.
And especially if it's a Disney title, then with Disney Anywhere, you wind up getting it pretty much anywhere you want to play it, whether it be iTunes, whether it be Amazon.
That cross-platform thing they have going on is fantastic. That's for sure.
It's great.
Speaking to the digital stuff, I found myself buying not really hardcovers of Marvel trades, but finding places online to go buy people's digital codes of trades.
Sure.
I have so many more Marvel trades I've bought in the past few years just digitally because people don't want the digital codes and they put them up for $1, $2, $3, whatever it is. And yeah, I will pick those up absolutely because it's way, way lower than other items out there and other ways to get it.
Oh my gosh.
Unfortunately, though, I don't know if they've discontinued that program or not. I think a lot of I know they just released a couple of trades in the last month or two. Maybe Chris can speak more about this. But I went looking for the hardcovers of those for digital codes online to purchase those from people that didn't want them, and it looked like they were unavailable. Everything's going back to softcover now. So I don't know if maybe they were losing money on that thing or what. I don't understand it.
Well, and something else that helps me with digital comics specifically is as I'm getting older, I mean, I'm 43 now, and since I went back to work, I stayed home with the kids as they were being born for a couple of years, but as I went back to work, I needed glasses now to read the computer. So as I'm getting older and need more aggressive prescriptions, reading something digitally, I can blow it up, especially on an iPad, to where my eyes are comfortable, where I don't necessarily need to wear glasses to read them if I didn't want to. Even if I wear glasses, it still helps me read it to be able to blow it up bigger when I want to look at detail or read something. It's just more comfortable in a lot of ways. I still love floppies and trades and hardbacks and stuff, but boy, there are times when it's nice to read something digitally and I can take my fingers and split them apart and get it to be a bigger size so I can read it easier.
Well, Chris, I mean, as the retailer, I mean, I know that obviously you have a stake in the actual physical copy of things, but I know that in the past year you've stopped selling new single issues of titles. But I know you also tried digital for the first time somewhat recently.
Yes.
I'm wondering what your take is on the digital comic now that you've actually experienced it, and you can also touch on the original topic if you want there about how it's changed in the past couple of years.
You bet. Well, first, we still sell comics but only to subscribers. We no longer have a new wall.
Right.
In terms of the digital, you're correct. Because I've looked at it recently a couple times because and when we're doing our off the racks for CGS, there's a couple books I've missed. So I go on there just so I can read them before we review them. On the one hand, I can see the allure of it. I mean, when it's well done, I mean, the crispness of the colors, being able to zoom in on panels. Yeah. There's definitely aspects of it that I can appreciate. But again, I say without any equivocation, I'm old-fashioned in the sense that I love the feel of an actual comic book. I love being able to hold the pages, and as Shane can attest, an old comic I love to give a nice sniff because I just love the old newsprint smell.
Oh, yes.
And I still love just holding a floppy and going through the whole thing and page by page. Having said that, I completely appreciate digital, and I think if they get to the point where they can bring the price down on the new comics, because they're charging the same they would charge if you walked into a shop and bought the comic. Now, maybe they're doing that to protect retailers, although I don't know if that's true because I can think of very few times that the comic book industry has gone out of its way to protect retailers. That may be a factor there. I don't know for sure, but someday if they can figure out how to monetize this in a cheaper way, and say make them 99 cents, like if you go and buy a song on iTunes, for example, or $1 something, it'll be interesting to see what happens to the business side of the medium at that point. One of the reasons I decided that my manager Bill and I decided to jettison the new wall, well, there were two reasons. One, it was just the cost was just getting so onerous. And we're a mid-sized suburban store, so we're not like we're getting massive city foot traffic that are going to come in and just buy, random books off the wall. And also, I'd like to get ahead of the curve because, will floppy comics be around as a business model in 5 years or 10 years? It's. I speak to many people, and Brent's a classic example. Like, why am I buying this stuff when I can get a trade, which overall is more cost efficient,
right, and
takes up less space, or I can just wait 6 months and read it digitally for $1. Yeah, that's a whole other topic. But the current model for new comics, I can't see it sustaining itself over the long run. In terms of collecting, what I think I find most interesting is when I started going to shows when I was a kid. In the later 80s, when I discovered comic shops and comic shows, there were no bargain comics. Most places you went, because there were no trade paperbacks really yet either. They were very, very rare you'd see that. Everybody was charging guide or more for pretty much any back issue you would see in the bins. There weren't as many books. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. There were actually a lot of indie companies in the 1980s that were starting to pop up, but because you didn't, obviously you were far away from digital. You didn't have, the huge amount of trade paperbacks and OGNs you have today. So basically, if you wanted to catch up on a character, back issues were it, with rare exception. So, and I remember trying to find runs of different characters I loved at different places, and in most cases, especially if you were going to an actual comic convention, they were stickered at guide, and in many cases, if the person was a crook, they were much higher than that. So that, for me, that's one of the most striking issues. Now, any show you go to, if there's even comics there at all, because now a lot of it's more multimedia than it even is comics, you're going to find bargain bins. Some are better than others in terms of selection and what they're actually charging. But most of the comics that are coming out, whether they're new or older, especially in the economic circumstances this country is now in, it's no longer the post-golden age of World War II. People don't have a lot of money.
Right.
Even people who are quote middle class. You're really struggling to make sure you're covering all your bills, and you can't drop, significant money on, a comic book. So, we sell most of our back issues are 50 cents. We have some sticker stuff that's a little bit higher, but even that I price way under guide because nobody's going to buy it. Granted, there are always key books that a very small number of collectors who have money will pay for, but for the most part, I still believe people want to read comics, especially people from our age who grew up with them, but they're not dropping significant amounts of money on it. If you're going to sell 50 cents or $1, yeah, they'll buy it, just like with our used trades. And you were mentioning hardcovers before. I still don't fully understand what the whole point of that aspect of trades are because they're incredibly overpriced.
Yeah.
Like, why am I going to spend $25 on a hardcover for like a 4-issue story arc that's going to appear months later in a softcover for $14 or $15? Maybe maybe that's for the Barnes and Noble crowd. That's possible. I'm not sure.
Airboy, actually, I still haven't bought Airboy for that exact reason because I saw the price on the hardcover and I'm like, wait a minute, this is 4 issues and you're charging over $20 for the hardcover? That's crazy.
And I loved Airboy, so I got the hardcover. But again, because I had my retailer discount, for me personally, it was reasonable.
Right.
But yeah, if I was just a customer, I wouldn't buy that. I'd wait until I loved it, but I'd wait until the softcover came out. So like even with our used trade selection, if we're selling a trade that's used for $5, or if it's a bigger trade for $10, people buy them. So that's why what's always one of the big struggles is, what do we carry that's new? Because a lot of this, like when we're having our big FCBD sale next Saturday. Bill's setting up a huge clearance table of just trades that we're just blowing out at 50% off that are new or newer because they're just sitting there.
Yeah. And
this is not crap stuff either. So we're making our trade selection leaner and meaner too because it's just I don't know. I sometimes I just wonder if the powers that be just get that the average American just doesn't really have a lot of disposable income.
Well, I mean, as someone who has significantly pared back the amount of single issues that he buys, and for that matter, trades, because I love going to comic shops. That is one of my favorite things. It has been for years. I take joy in going in there, flipping through books, and supporting people that I know need the support. Like, perfect example, right before I left for PAX East this past weekend, I went to Jim Hanley's Universe, now JHU Comics, because I knew Jamal Igle had a signing in the city, so I went there. I supported Actionverse in person and, got to talk to Jamal for a bit and, bought some issues. But I wouldn't normally do that. It has to be an event now to get me to go to the shop. And it's disappointing for me because it's still something I enjoy, but if I can get it for cheaper online, which I can, whether it be digital or whether it be through a site like DCBS or elsewhere, I'm going to do it because exactly what you said, Chris. I only make so much money.
Yeah.
I can't afford to pay sticker price on comic books, whether it be collections or whether it be single issues anymore, because it's just not economically feasible in any way. And when I see people do that, when I go to, say, for example, Midtown Comics here in Manhattan, and I see people paying full price at the rack, I wonder what tech job they must have to be able to afford this hobby on a weekly basis anymore, because it's getting more and more steep, and it just it confounds me in that aspect.
Well, part of that also, I'm sorry, Brent, go ahead.
I was going to ask if the last time he was in that shop was when I was in town for Thanksgiving.
What, JHU? Before that? Yeah, actually, you're right.
So 5 months.
It had been 5 months
between store visits.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Chris.
No, I was just going to say that, when you bring up like Midtown Comics, that's a store where obviously they can still do all new comics because they're in Manhattan, so they get enormous foot traffic. And like you said, Manhattan has a very, is increasingly gentrified. So you have a lot of people there who have money, who are making, probably pretty powerful salaries, so they can go in there and drop $50 or $100 a week on new comics.
Right.
And in the old days of my shop, we had customers who would do that, but you're basically forced to give discounts because it's just most people are not going to be willing to spend that much. Today, like the subscribers, and frankly, I'm surprised we even have the subscribers we have at this point, and I'm grateful for that. We give people 15% off, which is decent. It's not tremendous. That's all we can afford.
Right.
And when you think back to collecting, I think that's where trades have become so important, because if someone wants to get into the history of a character or a title or what have you, there's such a vast array of trades available, and there's always new ones coming out, old ones coming back into print, that you really almost never have to touch a floppy comic. If you want to catch up on a character, and then combine that with digital. Having said that, I never want to discourage people from obviously reading floppies. We have 30,000 50-cent comics in our store. Come on in. It's. I still believe there are plenty of people who love to read comics, but again, it's just finding that avenue to get it to them where they don't feel like oh God, I just can't afford this.
Yeah. Murd, let's throw it over to you, both what we've been discussing and how you've seen a change over the past couple of years.
Well, I guess I haven't been quite as smartly aware or keenly aware of the changes going on as you guys have, because I have allowed this whole digital revolution I keep hearing about to just go whizzing right over my head.
Of course.
Absolutely nothing to do with digital comics. Let's put it where it's at. Just to take what has already been said by Chris and others about wanting the feel of a comic in your hand, the tactile sensation of holding it, turning the pages, and then there's the olfactory dimension that Shane prizes so much. I enjoy doing that also.
That's almost habitual.
Make reference to our absent friend Pants. I'm pretty sure he has the same attitude I do. Give me, we're newsprint hardliners. Okay, give us the floppies or give us death.
Yep.
All right, because the day they stop making paper comics to buy and read is the day that I just stop collecting comics. That's when I just burrow in, hunker down, and read the several thousand comics I already own that I have not yet read.
Hey, we'll get a lot of issues at a time
the rest
bubble.
of your life.
A lot of issues at the time. Yeah, that's a good point, Ian. I might actually get that back on track. But yeah, so I just don't even pay attention to that in the least. So I'm just focusing my comments here on what it is to collect the hard copies. And so now I can tie into some other remarks made by those present as far as patronizing your local comic shop. Because I, more than anybody else here, I think, continue to do that on a regular basis. I mean, I itinerate out to my local comic shop once a week, every Wednesday afternoon without fail, every week. It's a regular thing for me. It's just, it's like a 40-minute drive for me too. It's the Golden Eagle comic shop is not really close by, so it's a commitment of time. And if you really want to start counting pennies, gasoline to get out there and do this every week. But
I think gas is cheap now.
Well,
compared to where it was.
That's a good point, Brent. It is a little more affordable to gad about these days than it was just a couple of years ago, and we should all be grateful for that for more reasons than one.
Oh yeah.
But just on the subject of comics, it's very nice to be just physically present in geek space. Just to be surrounded on all sides by the stuff and pith of fan culture. It's just a pleasant, soothing experience, and it's also valuable to me to be able to actually preview the merchandise before I buy. Just if I'm kind of every time I go to the comic shop, I make a list of things that have come out that week. It's really two lists: one list of things that I'm definitely going to buy, and one list of things that I'm on the bubble about. So I'll tell myself, today is a 7 and 2 day. So there's 7 things I'll definitely want to get off the shelves, and 2 things that I'll want to pick up off the shelves, flip through a little bit to make up my mind about. And you can't do that when you're buying digitally or ordering through an excellent service like discountcomicbookservice.com.
Yep. Yes, indeed.
Or, dcbservice.com. Go check them out. You'll be glad you did.
And Inside Trades.
So it's valuable to me to still have a comic shop to be able to do that at, and so I want to support my local retailer for that reason. But in addition to that, also, I don't want to support my local retailers because my parents and I are local retailers. We have our own business. We sell Christmas decorations, and so it's my pleasure, and I see it almost as a form of duty to get out there and support my fellow local merchants. And so I happily do that for Scott Fosnot over at Golden Eagle week in and week out. But all of that said, I have to admit that my experience as a regular patron of a local comic shop has changed considerably over the last few years, in that I can tell that local retailers are tightening their belts. And just to witness Chris's example up at Wild Pig Comics in Kenilworth, New Jersey, they have stopped carrying, as Chris has already said, shelf copies of new books. They accept subscription orders only. And when I go into a shop like Golden Eagle, where I at one time could be almost guaranteed of finding plentiful copies of any recent, at least Marvel or DC release I might want to find, it's always been a little harder to find the smaller publishers or indie stuff, but that's why the services like DCBS are so valuable. I always order my indie stuff from them just to make sure that I find it, because I can't be guaranteed of finding it walking into an LCS like Golden Eagle. But nowadays, even the Marvel and DC things, the big 2 releases, are sometimes not present in a shop like Golden Eagle in adequate supply. If I show up at like 12 or 1 in the afternoon, I'll have already missed the 1 or 2 copies of certain things that they ordered for the shelves. More than this year, just this year, than any other year I can remember, I've had to ask Scott behind the counter to special order for me additional copies of things like Tom King's Omega Man or Gail Simone's Secret Six that I miss off the shelf because they just didn't have enough copies there to meet the demand.
Right.
And so with retailers cutting it back to the bone like that, it gets a little frustrating for the casual buyer like me, who's trying to patronize them. But, I would set up a subscription list, such as Chris's Wild Pig still offers, except
that was my next question.
Yeah, well, Brent, I'm out of state for half of the year. That's the problem.
Yeah,
because I go away down to our family's branch store in New Jersey, and while I'm down there is no local comic book shop I can patronize, and I don't want Golden Eagle to be holding my books for me for so many weeks or months on end.
Course,
so I'd really only that whatever subscription list I give to Golden Eagle would only be good for a few months out of the year, and then so that's my reasoning there.
Yeah.
And darn it, there was so there's that. And then on the other end of things, moving beyond collecting new comics to the subject of collecting back issues, this problem with the retailers not being able to. Well, not wanting to order too many surplus copies of certain things for fear of being stuck with them. There's a trickle-down effect there in that cheap bin scavengers such as myself, people who enjoy looking at the quarter bins or at Wild Pig Comics, the 50-cent bins at their big sales, or the various bins you can find at conventions to find things that various retailers couldn't sell off the rack and so are now clearing out on the cheap. Those bins are starting to dry up because, as I've said several times over now, the local retailers aren't ordering enough extra copies that they have anything left over to be sold on the cheap. So I can't just pass up a comic and say, I don't want to pay full cover price for that now. I'll wait until I can get it for 50 cents at a con. I can't be guaranteed that I'll be able to find that.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of a change in the game for me as I said, a cheap bin scavenger.
I noticed that a lot, Murd, at this last New York Comic Con. Actually, there was a major shift in the amount of say dollar bins on the floor. I'd say almost even by half. I felt like there were a lot less to be found.
Although New York Con is kind of a special case, too, because that's rapidly bloating up into the East Coast San Diego, which means that comic retailers are slowly getting marginalized and pushed out as the floor space becomes more and more expensive.
Unfortunately,
yeah. Yeah, so even...
I'm sorry, Mark, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Chris.
No, because I have to depart. I just wanted to piggyback on your comments before I have to make my exit. First of all, Murd, again, with all great respect and affection, I always appreciate comments like that of people who are going to comic shops. And that, again, deepest heartfelt thanks for that continuous effort. The other comment I wanted to make is, you're right. Actually, two things. One, if you want to go to shows where you still see comics like that, if you're in the New Jersey area, NewJerseyComicBookShows.com, my friend John Paul's running shows in New Jersey for over 20 years. These are real comic book shows. Every dealer is just all long boxes, essentially. And check those out if you're in the region. If you're really a back issue guy, they are well worth your time. The other comment I wanted to make is Murd is also very correct about retailers not being able to order as much of a particular title because they're worried about, are we going to sell these things? And that's something we were struggling with over the past couple of years. And in fact, when I opened my first store in '99, and then I closed in 2010, then I was just doing shows for a couple of years. Then I reopened in 2012. And just that 2-year period, the change I saw, and when I reopened, I had a wall. I mean, it was more modest than in the old days, but it was still a fairly significant wall. And boy, was stuff just sitting there. And it's not like we were ordering copious amounts of every title that was in the previews catalog. At that point, I was like, why are we doing this? I mean, it's just – I think the combination of the recession and then just the shift with digital and just demographics and, most of the people I think reading books in the traditional format are older. Shane said he's 43. I'm 43. Most of the people we have coming to our shop who are subscribers, they're people. Most of them are around my age. A couple are younger, but most of them are around my age or older. So I think that's also a factor. And frankly, I know Golden Eagle does the same thing. If we didn't have Magic the Gathering, we wouldn't even be open.
Yeah.
And that's. Bill handles all that because that's not my cup of tea, but he does a wonderful job. But that's just another example of how the retail industry has changed. And you also mentioned New York Comic Con, and I went to that for a couple of years until I got tired of the crowds and just the as you said, there's just less and less comics at these shows.
Yeah,
and I think in a larger sense, you can correlate that with what I'm experiencing in a very small sense. I mean, I don't think those shows could run if they didn't have all the multimedia aspects that they have. So they're going to be a small shows like my friend John, which are very pure and dedicated to comics.
Yeah.
So it's going
to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how if San Diego feels a little bit different this upcoming year. Now that Warner Brothers has said that they're not going to be bringing out their stuff to the con, and Fox also has said as much because they're now worried about piracy of their presentations because, as we saw this past year, how Suicide Squad leaked out the way it did and Deadpool leaked out the way it did. So now Fox is specifically saying we're not even showing up to Hall H. So people have been commenting, maybe we'll actually get to swing back to comics a little bit for a big show like San Diego to perhaps replace that.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, I'm wondering as a retailer, where would you like to see the comic collecting hobby go? Just as a retailer, maybe as quickly as a retailer and personally, whether or not you want to keep your business afloat or, that kind of thing.
Good questions. In terms of collecting, like Murd, as long as there are print comics out there, I love selling them. And we do very well with our bargain stuff. I mean, it's like I said, it's not enough to keep the business running. We have to have the magic as well. But, like when we have our big sale next weekend, there'll be plenty of people, knock on wood per usual, going through those bins like locusts. So as long as I can continue to get my hands on collections in bulk that I can then sell to people for reasonable prices, we're going to keep doing that because I love doing that, and I love passing on those savings to people who love the medium and just want to read comics. In terms of keeping the business afloat, I love being a retailer. I love owning a small business with all that, regardless of all the stress and headaches that are involved. Because, with the exception of, my family, nothing else really makes me happier. So my intention is to go with it for as long as we possibly can. Now, having said that, you guys all know this. It's really, really difficult to run a niche business that meets a very niche customer base. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the magic helps because, believe me, magic players are in much greater quantities than comic book buyers, I can assure you. Yep. So that definitely – and they spend a lot more money too. That definitely helps. What I would like to happen with my business, because I've been in business overall for 17 years now. I mean, there's been many ups and downs, but I can't make a living off of it. I mean, I'm a teacher, and I've been a teacher for 17 years too. So that's my day job that pays my personal bills. I'm not going to get into a whole tangent on that, but for various recent political changes in the state of New Jersey, I don't really enjoy my teaching job in many ways anymore at all because it's becoming very corporate. Thanks, Governor. So the store is what gives me great satisfaction. But like so many things in life, what you'd love to do to make a living, it's often very hard to make enough money to make that your living. But damn it, we keep trying.
And Chris, I'll point out as well the comic shop that I went to all the way throughout my college years, Bulletproof Comics here in Brooklyn.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Recently restructured their store. They used to have a back area where they would sell like old videotapes and a couple of old video games and stuff like that. That back area is now solely for Magic. Exactly for what you said, because that they understood that brings in as much money as it does, and they were quite literally taking up the entire front of the store with a Magic table whenever they would have tournaments. So there was you'd have to squeeze by to do anything in the store itself.
We have to do the same thing, and that's a good point, Ian, because unless you are Jim Hanley or Midtown or Mile High, you have to do that. It doesn't help that Bill always jokes that this is the only industry in the world that goes out of its way to make sure its retailers fail. Because the way it's set up, and you guys all know this, we have to order things 2 months ahead of time.
Yeah.
Hoping people will then buy these things. And you can we have different guarantees from subscribers, like we have their credit cards, but even so, people still have to come in on their own initiative and buy these books. And we have to make educated guesses based on our numbers and our experience and our gut, like what should we have and what shouldn't we have. When you step back and look at it, it's totally insane. I mean, it's an insane model. And and plus, without going into too much here, and you guys are all going to know what I mean by this, we're dealing with a monopoly.
Yeah. When
it comes to a certain facet of being a retailer, and you know what that leads to.
There's only so much you can do. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I love comics, and as long as I can sell them in some form, I will be. But you have to if you want to have a shop like this, you have to do other things.
Yeah.
Or you'll be closed within months.
Well, and I think Lem often said, and Scott says too, when I see him at Golden Eagle, if they didn't diversify since their inception, they wouldn't be around either. I mean, it was gaming things and sports cards that helped Golden Eagle continue to have longevity. If you don't diversify, you'll sink.
Oh, without question. Yeah.
My friends, I must depart. I apologize for that, but I have some family matters to attend to.
That's perfectly fine. Chris, give the address and the website for the store.
Oh, thank you. It's wildpigcomics.com, 14 South Michigan Avenue, Kenilworth, New Jersey. If you're in the area, we're having a huge FCBD event this coming next Saturday, May 7th.
Huge.
Yes. 30,000 back issues, 25% off our 50-cent comics, 25% off all our trades, 25% off our sticker books, toon tumblers, pop figures, magazines. And we're doing an auction at 3 o'clock. You can go online to see the fantastic items we are auctioning off, including a Batman 91 from 1955 at very low opening bids.
And maybe Pants won't win them all.
Well, it's not a raffle anymore. It's an auction.
That's
so Pants,
true.
Pants is going to have to step up and put some money down. So,
always a pleasure, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm honored to be on, guys. Congratulations on your 10-year anniversary. Great to talk to you. And my CJ's brothers, you'll be receiving an email from me very shortly.
Excellent.
And I will see you both tomorrow evening, Adam and Shane.
Sounds good.
All right. See you then.
All right. Take care.
Good night,
Chris.
everybody. Thanks.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
All right. We now return to our regularly scheduled podcast, already in progress. All right. So let's piggyback to something Murd brought up before Chris interjected there. If it was up to me, Murd, I would still be able to do comics exactly the way you are with just a list the day of, because the whole 2 months before thing still doesn't work with me. Like having to pay full attention to the previews list and making sure I didn't miss anything, and if something gets canceled, then I still have to go get it anyway. It's just it's one of those complicated matters that would be so much easier if I could just go boop 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 week after week and have them shipped to me or go to the store simply like that. So I envy you on that.
I mean, you can't put stuff back on the rack if you're at this,
Well, that's
if
true.
you're subscribing in a store.
Right.
You have the option of not buying it. Unfortunately, the thing with if you're collecting through DCB service, which we used for many, many years and still support, and they support us, it's still sometimes it's a crapshoot because you don't know what you're getting, and especially in the way that I think DC has made that they're not going. There's certain books. I don't know if it was a couple years ago they said that they were shipping every month. Mm-hmm. You would get some fill-in people or something like that. The weekly books. I know some artists have changed on these last 52 issues of the new 52 because of the new Rebirth stuff. Van Sciver jumped off Edge of Oblivion to do all the Rebirth stuff, and I like Artie and Syaf, but he's not Ethan Van Sciver.
Well, and over the last. Boy, I've been married almost 20 years, and for a long while, I was able, because of the job I was able to go to a comic store every Wednesday at lunchtime, and because I only worked half a day on Wednesday, and it was a lot of fun. And if I could do that if I could arrange that work was only a half day or maybe I was off on Wednesdays, I'd absolutely still go to a comic store at some point in a day, at least every other week, if not every week, because that is fun. Yeah. I love Wednesday days off. Everybody at work now looks at me like I'm crazy when I say that because, of course, they want Friday or Monday off. But, man, I love Wednesday. It's a break in the week. It makes 2 little short mini weeks. And plus I can hit a comic book store somewhere along the way and see what's out there. Even if I've ordered stuff, which I do, I still enjoy going to a comic store when I can.
Yep, what you were saying makes perfect sense to me, Shane.
Yeah,
and I use it as my sort of a get-about day in the middle of the week, and I not only go to the comic store, but being out there on the other end of the county gives me an excuse to run little errands that I've been putting off. So works out well.
And
especially
nothing beats a good store with a good person behind the counter that you can actually have a good conversation with as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've said it a million times over the years. That's how we all, for the most part, started to talk was at Golden Eagle, hanging out for a Wednesday afternoon through the evening in a lot of cases. If we didn't have a store that allowed that, I wouldn't have the friends I have today. None of this would have happened the way it did in the last 10 years. Yeah. 11 now.
And also, for that matter, considering about the time of year it is and that we're talking about people behind the counter at a comic shop, I raised this Mexican chocolate stout in your honor, Mr. Jamie D. We're still thinking about you even at this point.
Yeah.
Because I actually seeing the Facebook memories like today, the fact that 5 years ago today was Super Show 2011 had me thinking about Jamie a lot. All right, well let's transfer back from the sad to the happy. Brent, were you gonna add something there?
I just wanted to, I guess, talk about the last time I went into a shop was to get the Wonder Woman Earth 1 graphic novel from Grant Morrison. Mm-hmm. And I went, I think I got out of work at 4, which was a little early for me. It took me about 20 minutes to get down to the shop, which is the one close to my house. And they had 1 copy left. And this is like the big, kind of the big release for the week. And I don't know how many copies they ordered. They're kind of a smaller shop. They they're not moving anything like the mall store I used to frequent a lot or anything like that. But I don't know if they ordered more than 3 or 4 copies of this thing. And that was the big release of the week.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it wasn't very good, in my opinion.
But
so I tried to stand there and talk to the guy behind the counter a little bit. But, he was pretty... the guy over there, Almondo, I think he's one of the owners, is pretty good. And the other guy that owns it, if you follow... what's his face? Stephen ML's Facebook page is the artist Danny Haas, and did the Stardust and Green Arrow art for... what the hell event? What is it? A couple years ago, sells his art there. It's a pretty nice shop.
Mm-hmm.
But there wasn't that many people there. But it's 4:30. But I was just surprised of, this is like the biggest release of the week, and they had 1 copy left. And I made sure to ask, hey, can I buy this? It's on the display rack right next to the register. There's 1 copy left. I didn't know if that was a display copy or if that was like, somebody who subscribes copy. I didn't want to, steal anybody's copy. I know how that feels. It sucks.
Yeah.
But it's just strange that, a small to mid-sized store only was carrying a couple things of the biggest graphic novel from Grant Morrison in years.
It's certainly possible, exactly how it's been stated before, that it's hard to tell even with a title like Earth One how well it's going to sell. So you only order so many right off the bat. I mean, if it sold out as quickly as you say, Brent, I wouldn't be surprised if they then got in more immediately afterwards, for future weeks. But perhaps their initial orders were a little, skittish because they didn't know just how much of it was going to wind up selling.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Also true.
Mert, I'm curious, since you're the one who's in the shops the most out of all of us right now, what would you say about the demographic of the comic shop at this point? Like about age-wise and man-women-wise?
Really hard to say, Ian, because usually when I'm in there, it's the early afternoon. Most people need to work, and there aren't very many people in there other than myself.
Gotcha.
There's one guy. His name is Albert, and he's Shane. You know Albert, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Shane? Yeah, he's in his 50s, I'm pretty sure, and he's I think he's a trust fund kid. He hasn't worked in a while. He doesn't really need to, but he hangs around there for hours on end, talking the ears off of anyone who will listen about Doctor Who and various Disney things. I think just every single shirt he owns has some kind of Disney character airbrushed onto it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's one example. And the other people we see, there are a couple of youngish guys in their 20s, and every once in a while there will be like a mother and some kids. But yeah, I don't think we can really take that as an accurate cross section of even the customer base of that shop, let alone the entire hobby. We can't extrapolate anything from that. I'm just in there at a weird time.
I think.
Yeah, and plus the mall itself is deteriorating greatly.
It's depressing.
Yeah.
This is dilapidated, mostly empty.
Yeah. I think if you go to somewhere that has a lot of foot traffic just in a mall setting, it's going to be a much different demographic than what we're talking about here.
Well, with a day like Free Comic Book Day, it would be very interesting to see exactly what types of people are still going to it at this point, because it's Free Comic Book Day has existed for years now, and it is a good way to bring the kids and to get a few comics. But I know that also plenty of adults to take it as a moment to perhaps get back into the hobby with deals and stuff like that. So that'll make me very curious, because I usually go to JHU for my Free Comic Book Day, and I'll probably do the same this year. But after you guys hit up Wild Pig, for those of you who can make it, because who knows. But I'd be very curious to see what the general demographic is on a big event night.
Yeah,
because. What is actually very positive is what I see crowd-wise at, say, a convention, is, just how many young kids seem to still be into comics. Like, you might not necessarily see it at the comic shop on a Wednesday, but they're there in one form or another, whether it be digital or whether it be, just trying to get as many cheap deals as possible on the floor. But I have hope that there is at least 3 or 4 more generations worth of kids out there who will be able to continue this lovely comic book medium of ours for future generations to come.
Well, there are some encouraging signs out there.
Oh, yeah.
Just from people that we all know who have kids and who are bringing them up in the hobby.
Yeah.
There's some friends that I have all across the state right now that I did not know some of their kids just got into comics just because of seeing a movie or seeing something on TV. That surprised me. And that's what the hope of Intent is that you see these movies and, hey, I want to read some more about these characters.
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised even to know that 4 or 5 kids that I know now have read comics more frequently just because of the movies that are out there.
Yeah.
Well, that's in addition to being entertaining in and of themselves, I guess that's a fringe benefit of there being so much video media entertainment out there based on these characters.
Sure, yeah, and even the cartoons for that matter. I mean, with Ultimate Spider-Man and Avengers, even though they might not necessarily be for me, I know they are for plenty of other people, and that's really all that matters. And Brent, you'll have a kid who's old enough to read soon, and they got plenty of comics to read.
Soon.
Yeah.
Couple years.
Yeah, I know. Raise that kid right, Brent.
There's shelves waiting for her.
Seriously. And going back to back issue diving a little bit, what is it in a back issue bin that draws you to it? Because there are plenty. At every con you go to, or perhaps even in every store that you go to, there's bound to be at least one. But what calls your name? Is it a specific sorting, or is it a size that makes your eyes go wide? Like, what is it that makes you want to bin dive, Shane?
All right, so I'm not above looking in any bin for books, especially if there's good price going on. Mm-hmm. However, my snotty preference is alphabetical.
Yes.
If it's an alphabetical, I'm way more inclined. It doesn't even have to be exact alphabetical. Even if just all the A's and B's and C's and so forth are together,
just loose
alphabetical, I'll take a chance.
Yeah.
But hodgepodge, totally just out of order, man. Oh, I'll give it a couple minutes and then I give up.
It is something of a turnoff unless you're in a very high energy state.
Yeah, and I haven't been in that high of an energy state in a long time for bin diving. So for me, it's some kind of alphabetical sorting.
Let's go alphabetical. Let's go with that. Yeah.
For me to even consider looking at it. But then again, I'm not bin diving like I used to. I mean, I've filled a lot of holes for comics collections that I had. Mm-hmm. The only thing I actively seek out is old Justice League issues, and even those I'm getting to the point where they're $20+ a piece. So I'm looking for an issue at a convention maybe twice a year now, versus when I was able to go 50 cents and get 20, 30 books at a shot now. It's just different in the last 10, 15 years because of collecting what I wanted to collect and getting the assortment of books that I was looking for completed.
Yeah. And you know what? It applies to trade paperbacks too. For that matter, talking about back issue bins, like if I go to a con and I see X-Men directly next to Angela, it's gonna turn me off. I need it to at least be A through Z in one form or another, or like at least split it into frickin' Marvel, DC, and Independent, and then they give me alphabetical order. It feels lazy if you don't actually bother to just give me at least a loose alphabetical order on stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. Murd, does anything turn you off when it comes to back issue bins?
Well, I'm not bothered by lack of alphabetical order as much as some, but as I said, I need to be. I need to feel up to it. If I'm flagging a little bit, like I've been walking around a convention all day and I'm flagging a bit, and I've come to a bin full of just randomly disorganized junk, I'll probably pass it by. True, but if I'm kind of in the mood for the hunt, then I'll gladly wade into the non-alphabetical morass provided me, just in the hopes of finding some deals. Turn-ons for me usually include older cover logos or cover dresses from Marvel and DC, because I know that we're getting into more like the Copper and Bronze Age stuff. That's my meat and drink. Like if I see that long horizontal band across the top of the cover that says Marvel Comics Group, or the old Milton Glaser designed DC Bullet in the upper left-hand corner of a comic. Those are things that I'm always happy to see.
I missed that bullet.
I do too.
Oh, don't we all? Yeah, but
I missed the last logo they had. The
With
cover page was
Star
not doing it
Swirl.
for me.
Yeah, I like the star swirl around the DC as well.
yeah, it kind of reminded me of the old Hanna-Barbera closing title card.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the current one,
The current one is definitely made for an age where you see apps.
Yes.
It's very tech friendly.
Yeah, the corner curling off like a page being
And
turned.
As much as I didn't think I would like it, I do like seeing it at the end of shows, the end of cartoons, whatever you're watching, they put a little niche of that in there, and that is entertaining to me. That is a little wink and a nod to me, knowing what the DC logo has gone through. That I appreciate what they're doing with it. I appreciate what they can do with it now if you apply it to apps on phones and iPads and various other technological paraphernalia. It's a lot of fun to see some of that stuff. Do I think it's necessary? Probably not, but it's the way the world is. It's if you want something recognized, make it to look like an app.
Sure.
And people will notice it.
Yeah, and it also works pretty well animated on, say, the beginning of a movie.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
having those pages flip, and if it's a Batman movie, you can see the Batman pages flipping on the DC logo. That's pretty effective for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brent, you don't really go to too many cons, but I forget when is MegaCon? Is that's coming up pretty soon, right?
It is in 3 weeks.
Okay. So when you go, are you going to be trade paperback diving in any way?
I don't know if I'm going to go this year. I have a lot of stuff going on in May. I'm doing a play in the local Fringe Festival again, and we have a show that weekend.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we have a couple shows. So it being in March was a lot easier for me to go to, just in general. But now that it's in May, it's after Free Comic Book Day, it's in the rest of summer convention season. They have a great lineup this year. I really, really want to go.
Yeah.
I just don't know if I'm going to be able to because I'll only be able to go for a portion of one day. And since Fan Expo's bought it and it's moved to 4 days, and now they're bringing in Kevin Smith and all these other people, Adam
hitters,
West.
yeah.
There's a huge heavy hitter lineup right now. It's just gotten more expensive. It's no longer the $20 single day ticket or weekend pass it used to be.
Out of curiosity, how much does it cost now?
Honestly, I have not looked.
Okay.
Just because the schedule's been that tight. I'm not even entertaining the idea of going. I did go last year. It wasn't that bad. But being all digital is something I'm not turned on by long boxes or anything, because it's like, I don't collect it that way anymore. Yeah. And even looking at the $5 trades and stuff, it was all, I guess stuff I've already had. Not looking to complete my Why the Last Man trades or Preacher trades. And even that stuff, I would love to read Transmet if they had $5 trades of that. But they don't, because it's a
premium.
What do you call it? Evergreen.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They can always sell that. So the things that you do see in $5 trades are not necessarily the series I want to follow and trade, or things I'm like, oh, I should read that. I don't see $5 Sandman trades ever.
Yeah.
At least at MegaCon anyway.
It's mostly just Marvel and the occasional DC, really.
Right.
Yeah. Well, this actually stems into something that I definitely wanted to bring up on this episode, and is very much important to the future of the industry. For a comic book collector that is just starting out now, and we could say a kid, or we could say someone, older than that. In fact, we can give multiple suggestions even. What would you suggest to a new reader at this point? What is the series that would immediately call out to you as this is something you should try right off the bat? Because I do a panel every year at Anime Next called American Comics for Manga Fans, where I give suggestions along these lines to, say, browsers, to people who might be into manga but not necessarily American comics. But what are those series that immediately call out to you as ones that might be good for the newbies? Murd, we'll start off with you.
Well, I'm going to say something that Shane will probably want to echo, but just using what we were saying a little while ago about using the current crop of films that tie into these into the comics medium to hook people in. Why don't we just recommend the Marvel Star Wars line of titles? That is a world, and those are characters
very
that
good.
most people know. And it'll give them an opportunity to familiarize themselves with the storytelling format of comics, the visual language, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And it doesn't hurt that the books that Marvel is doing right now are very well made.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, they still have the cream of the crop on those books.
Yeah, and they're canvassing a large array of Star Wars tales, from the mainstay Star Wars universe to a Darth Vader specific story. There's the Anakin and Obi-Wan stuff if you liked things that happened during the prequels. There's now a Poe Dameron series, which certainly harkens into the Force Awakens and beyond stuff.
Little series about lots of different characters.
Yeah, Chewbacca, Leia, Lando had one.
There's the C-3PO special,
one shot.
which is
Yeah, I mean,
Tony Harris and James Robinson.
Oh yeah,
Oh my God. Wow.
I mean, the talent that they've had on those books is just immense and spectacular. I've been very, very pleased with how those books have been developing since they started. Truth be told, with all the reboots that Marvel's gone through, other than right now Doctor Strange being the only Marvel floppy I'm getting, it's all Star Wars stuff. Everything else I either pick up in a trade or get a digital code to read from somebody. Yeah, it's really a strange time for me in that way, that the bulk of my Marvel comics, everything's Star Wars except for one, maybe two, as time goes on.
Justice League.
That's all.
Yeah.
DC stuff, yeah.
Well, are there any, say, like evergreen trades that you would point out to somebody, whether or not they're current, and be like, this is a comic that you would be interested in?
Well, Brent mentioned Sandman trades. That seems like a good thing to recommend to anybody who just enjoys a well-told story in a fantasy vein.
Yeah, I think you can say the same thing of the Starmans, too.
True.
The Jack Knight Starmans. That's just as intriguing a story.
That's a good point, yeah.
For a more mature to adult reader than just, say, a little kid. For a little kid, I would go right with Bone. Both my kids have read Bone. They both love it. That was a pleasant surprise. I read that as an adult the first time when we started reading it on the show. I had never read Bone up to that point. And I loved it, and then to see my kids get into reading that as well, it was a pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
And some of the benefits of comics right now are that you have very good continuations of animated series out there that people can turn to. Like, for example, the Avatar: The Last Airbender stuff that Dark Horse has been putting out is all great stuff. So any kid that might be interested, might have been interested in that animated series, can immediately go to at least 6 or 7 series worth of Gene Yang written Avatar: The Last Airbender stories to continue that if they really wanted to. So I think that would be definitely something that I would recommend off the top of my head if you're a kid. Same with the Adventure Time stuff.
I would even go if you're a kid, if you're a parent taking kids to the movies to see all these Marvel movies, which are absolutely fantastic. I can't think of a Marvel movie universe movie that has been really that terrible. I think the closest that I would get to that is either of the Hulk movies, and I like them both. They're just not quite as close knit, tied in, well done as what we're thinking of as the Marvel Phase 1, 2, and 3 stuff that are out there right now. I would say
I think Thor: The Dark World was pretty terrible.
Yeah.
I thought it was better than the first Thor, but that's just me.
No.
I think if you take any of your kids to go see those things and they're interested in reading, there's a plethora of Marvel books and storylines that feed those movies that you could turn your kids to, certainly in the trades.
Any of Brew Baker's Winter Soldier stuff would immediately be up there. Yeah, and especially with Civil War coming out. If your kid is old enough, I mean, just like start them off with Winter Soldier, roll them into Civil War, and you're getting enough of the story there where I think you'd be able to get into it pretty easily.
Yeah.
Brent, any ones you can think of off the top of your head?
I really think the Ultimate Spider-Man with Miles Morales is probably the best thing that's been out in a long time. So that first trade. Not the new series, But that first trade's pretty good, and that first couple series is trade's really good, I think.
And I would definitely bring up Ms. Marvel. You know, I mean, Ms. Marvel was a kid that, I mean, I have a friend of mine has a now, I mean, oh my God, time flies, like soon to be 13-year-old kid that I've been sending like every major like holiday or birthday, I've been sending her a Ms. Marvel trade. And she's been immediately like gobbling it up and reading it over and over and over again. I mean, that is a evergreen book, if I could ever say one. Like, absolutely I'd say the Spider-Man for a new era in a lot of ways. Love that book.
And as much as we're talking about things that we see in the Marvel universe with the Marvel movies and stuff, don't overlook all the stuff that's out there in DC land at least the TV shows. Flash and Arrow and Supergirl are just fantastic. I think most of their animated movies are well done and have an interesting plot point pulled from a comic that makes it worth, if somebody's interested in seeing something like that, that it'd be worth reading it as well. I have always thought DC's animation side of the world does phenomenal work for the most part. I mean, like anything else, there's always some clunkers or some that just didn't seem to work as well, but I think their animation house is very well done, and that goes to the half-hour stuff, even as far back as the Batman animated series and the Superman, the Justice League stuff, Teen Titans, the Teen Titans Go stuff. You have all the movies that I've produced, and I think it's up to like 20-some different movies that have come out now.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff. And then you do have the DC movies that are coming out, and the ones that have always been. You got all those Batman ones and Superman. There is value in them, even if we as adults don't like every single thing about them. There are some things that our kids might like. Like my boys really liked Batman Forever and Batman and Robin because they were a little bit more flashy and silly. And I like them well enough, but they really got into them because of that. They reminded me of what I felt like for the 60s Batman TV show when I first started to watch it. I mean, there is something to be said for that kind of entertainment that drew me in to Batman as a character, the same way these things are drawing my kids in various different ways.
Oh, definitely, yeah, and you can easily turn to the comics that were the inspiration for these shows. Yeah. Like for instance, Wade's Flash. I mean, I still think that you don't even really need continuity to enjoy Mark Wade's Flash run. Like you could start out with his first trade and just go nuts from there and get a really general idea of what the character of the Flash is. Doesn't matter whether it's Barry Allen or Wally West. You're still getting a damn good Flash story that feels like the show in a lot of ways.
Sure does.
Yeah.
That for Ian, the first year of Injustice is very strong.
Yeah, no, you've mentioned that to me before. Yeah, I've read a few issues of it.
There are two separate trades, if they want to do it that way. But I believe they did release a collection where it's both trades in one volume as well, just recently. So that's very good.
Murd, anything from the year 2000 you would recommend?
Oh.
In the year 2000.
Yes, let's look to the future. All the way.
Oh, man.
Wire ropes.
Well, I mean, in all seriousness, though, I mean, are there any older comics you would suggest to the newer reader?
Well, if we are looking at things that fall within the sphere of the time bubble, how about Kevin Smith's Green Arrow run?
Yes, very good.
Yeah,
crossover appeal to people who've liked his movies.
Yeah,
it's fairly accessible too, I think. I mean, it gets a little deep into certain finer points of DC history now and then, but it's shot through with enough humor that I think it's a swallowable pill. I mentioned Thunderbolts, and I'm going to say it again: Thunderbolts. Tale of costumed villains getting a taste of the good life of a superhero and being sort of reverse corrupted into seeking redemption as superheroes. It held on to some of the fun and the texture of Marvel history at a time in the early 2000s when Marvel was trying to distance itself from same. Yeah. It was one of the few Marvel series that I clung to the bitter end at a time when I was finding DC much more suitable to my tastes.
I read most of it myself, Murd. Even through when the 5 name changes they gave Genius Fell.
Right, poor guy. and then they just called him dead.
Yeah. Well, one actually, I mean, and this isn't for young people. This is for, the older or perhaps even the teens and above. But if you're watching The Walking Dead, just read The Walking Dead. They're entirely different animals. I mean, I understand that, but basic story beats are all there. And that's one of the things that I appreciate about reading Walking Dead is I'll read an issue. I mean, I'm almost entirely caught up now, just through my local library system, which I'm going to bring up in a second, actually. But knowing what happens in the comic and then seeing how it's transferred over to the show is actually really interesting. And it's one of the first times I've really been able to experience that, where I'm not angered by changes. I'm just like, oh, right, that guy died instead of that guy. It's one of those general like evolutions almost from comic to the screen that I'm actually really enjoying. So, anybody who is curious, Kirkman's Walking Dead is one that is very easily accessible, both digital and via trade, that you can very easily catch up on.
There is a guy that I work with. He was all into watching the TV show, and someone introduced him. It wasn't even me. I mentioned it, and he would kind of blow me off a little bit, which is fine. I mean, reading comics isn't for everybody if they don't have their heart into it.
Right.
But somehow he got a hold of a few digital copies of Walking Dead, and now he does that. He reads all the Walking Dead digitally and watches the show as it progresses. I'm a couple seasons behind on Walking Dead, but what I have watched of it and what I have read of the book, that's a unique experience that I think is just enjoyable to be able to not only read it, but watch it. And like you said, Ian, point out to myself, if not at anybody else, the differences in what happens in the story, but the beats are all there.
Right.
To be just as enjoyed. I like seeing what they do differently on the show versus what I've read in the books. And it still feels the same, yet is interesting enough to keep me going in a lot of ways.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I kind of like, I understand Game of Thrones people a lot more now because I haven't read the books. But for those who have read the books who are now watching the show, I understand them a lot more watching The Walking Dead.
Well, and because of this experience with Walking Dead that so many people have, I don't know why we don't, and I do, but I don't know why we don't translate that to other comic book characters, groups, Avengers, DC stuff. It should be the same way. It's told one way in the comic book. It's told a little bit differently in the books or in the movies because that's okay. It's all right to do that. And Walking Dead is a prime example of it being okay for so many people. I don't know why that doesn't translate to the wider array of storytelling between any comics character.
Yeah, see, if the makers of Amazing Spider-Man 2 had been listening to you, Shane, maybe we wouldn't have had to have Gwen Stacy's neck snap.
Well,
and just because it happened in the comics.
Yeah.
And everything that happened in that movie, Superman. But anyway, just had to bring it up since we just talked about it last episode. But that's and actually that is something to bring up though, is that when it's done well, like when it's still feels like the general characters from the book that you're watching on the TV or film. That's what I look forward to. It when you don't get the basic feel of the character itself, that's when you got to worry a little bit. Like one of the reasons why I'm not watching Lucifer on Fox is I realize it's for some people, and if you're enjoying it, that's great. It got picked up for a second season, so obviously enough people are watching it, but it's not enough of the character from the comics to make me want to go watch the show. So if I want to watch a police procedural, I'll go rewatch the first 10 seasons of Bones, because that's what it feels like we have here on the show, just with a supernatural bent.
Yeah.
And talking about Kirkman, Invincible. I mean, Again, it's not for kids, but if you're looking for a very unique superhero tale that just keeps getting better and better, in my honest opinion, Invincible's for you. I mean, I don't know how much you guys have read of it at this point, because have you read past like the two volumes you guys did for the show, or?
I think we only did the first one. Actually.
First one, okay, all right,
And
gotcha.
no, a lot of people, you included, Ian, encouraged us to keep going with it because it does get better than that first volume.
It gets a lot better. Yeah.
Oh, wait till Ryan Outley jumps on and saves the art.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Otley is I'd say a lot more consistent on the art than the original creator was. Although he still does the occasional issue here and there, but I am so thrilled with the overall universe that Kirkman has crafted here. And really, if you're a fan of Justice League, like specifically for you, Shane, I think you're gonna love Invincible if you ever get the chance to sit down and read more of it, because it's totally in your wheelhouse.
That's something that you've said to me before, is that others have too. I just haven't sat down to read any of it beyond that first trade we did.
And I have the Ultimate Collections, which if you ever find them for cheap, that's a great way to catch up. They're 12 issues in a pop, and I think we're up to, looking at my shelf here, we just came out with the 10th one now.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
So that's it. I mean, they only come out once a year, but if you're behind, how are you even going to notice?
Yeah, right. And 12, speaking of like 12 issues per trade, I absolutely love the format that DC put in their Starman omnibuses. They're a great size.
Yeah.
I am all for omnibuses, but I can't stand when they hit 500, 1,000 pages. That it's just absolute ludicrous to me to have something that large to try and tote around and read, or even pick up and read on my lap without crushing it.
Yeah.
People like them. That's great. I'm happy for you. I just wish that they were the 12 issue type time size for a one trade, one omnibus hardback or something. That's just more manageable.
I was disappointed to see the soft cover got canceled again. The Starman omnibus.
Oh,
yeah, I know. I don't know whether they're being under ordered or whether or not they're just that set on it not coming out.
wow.
Yeah, but that brings me to one of the final topics I wanted to bring up tonight. Going back to digital for a second here, and I know, Murd, it's not your wheelhouse, but something that I wanted to bring up specifically is the subscription model that Marvel Unlimited is bringing to the table for collectors. I have been a Marvel Digital Unlimited subscriber now for 2 years, and I still buy Marvel comics, just not all of them. And there is no better way to catch up on the backlog of Marvel comics than Marvel's Digital Unlimited. Because if you don't care that the issues are 6 months or older, you got everything. I mean, including every Star Wars comic you can possibly want, including the Dark Horse stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, all of the back issues of Iron Man are on there now. They're filling in gaps on X-Men. They're filling in gaps on Fantastic Four. So many to name that it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger every single month. And it just makes me feel like this is in some ways the future of comics. To be able to use that Netflix model to be able to read as many comics as you want. As long as you read like 3 comics in a month, you've paid for your subscription.
Okay.
Because think about it. I mean, a Comixology issue is going to cost at least $2. So if you're paying $7 a month, 3 or 4 issues, and bam, that's it. You've paid for your month's worth of Marvel Unlimited. But I used to be like you guys, where I needed to feel it in my hands. Like every day I would bring like 7 or 8 comics with me on the train, for my subway commute, so that I'd be able to do it. But I one day woke up and I'm like, all right, let me put in all these digital codes that I have and start reading on Comixology instead. And then when I got my Marvel Unlimited subscription, it also made it so much easier. I feel like DC needs to get on this train, and so do a bunch of others, because this is where we're going. If you want people to be able to read your comics, you need to have them available, and that's what Marvel has. Brent, agree, disagree?
Yeah, I still have yet to try out that service. Is their app still allow you only 12 issues to download at a time?
Yes, it does, but I mean, again, that's perfectly fine if you're you could just delete one and then download the next one, and then that's there for you. So I mean, it's not that bad.
The problem with my Comixology app right now on my iPad is that my iPad is large enough that I can have way too many trades I need to read on there. Mm-hmm. But I just like scrolling through all of them and going, I need to read that. I need to read that. I need to read that.
Yeah.
But the problem I see with that, Ian, is I don't know that if digital is not generating enough revenue on Comixology right now to supplant the physical copies, or or generating enough revenue by volume for them to be able to lower the digital prices, and they don't want to piss off the retailers like Chris, but I don't see how a subscription model that in that manner, when the largest selling comic really only hits, what's the average, 100,000 each month, if that. That's really not enough revenue to keep all these companies afloat to produce the same amount of comics they are producing, unfortunately. So I don't know that the subscription model is the way to go.
I mean, you're still
just
guaranteeing
because the audience has shrunk so much. I wish DC would do something like that. Then I would probably do it for both companies, just because the things I want to read would be on there. I'd certainly be interested in if like Image did something. I think that would be tremendous.
yeah.
But I don't know, with all the rights issues and stuff like that, probably won't happen. But I don't know. I just don't. I think the audience is too small right now for that type of service to be conceivable.
Shane, what do you think? Is that our future?
I hope that floppies never go away, because I do still like to have like my Justice Leagues, my Batmans, whatever my favorite thing is, and everybody has their own favorite thing in their hands. Just like I read a book, I just read The Martian as a novel, and I much more enjoyed that as a tactile experience versus some other things that I've read on an iPad as a novel. I have the same thing with comic books. I like when I'm going on a trip that I can download 10, 12 issues at a shot and take just my iPad with me. And that's great because it's more convenient for me to just carry that rather than books.
Right.
But I don't ever want to see the books go away completely.
I don't think I want to either, honestly.
But I like the idea of what you can get from the Marvel app. And I wish DC had something like this for those issues that I can't get a hold of in a trade or in a single issue format, because it's either too expensive that I'll never be able to buy it, or they just don't produce it in a trade anymore. I think a historical perspective of what you have access to is more valuable to me than just brand new issues alone, being in that. Having DC producing something that would bring out all the old Justice Leagues, all the old Batmans for all of time in some fashion would mean a lot more to me than just the newest issues being a few months old.
I agree.
I'm always behind on my reading, so that wouldn't bother me at all.
Yeah, and that is what makes Marvel Unlimited as awesome as it is to me. Like, if I want to read Simonson Thor, I can read Simonson Thor.
Yeah.
At the same time I'm reading Jason Aaron Thor. That's just something that's available to you on their app. DC would have to do something similar.
And I think, as much as I like DC as far as characters go, the last few years have not been its brightest for me. If you like the stuff that's been out there, that's great. They're already behind on the lack of digitalness in their books, as I said earlier. I just think Marvel is going about that in a better way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. I mean, Mert, I know we're not going to take your physical copies out of you unless it's your cold dead hands. But, but
exactly the metaphor I would have used.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that either.
But how do you feel about the subscription model, similar to a Netflix or so on and so forth?
I know so little about it. No opinion that I might formulate would have any value at all. Honestly, digital consumption of anything is just so not a part of my world. I still buy CDs.
So do I.
I do still buy select CDs.
Yeah,
I do on occasion.
Yeah, just the greatest hits of the Raspberries from Amazon last week.
I'm part of They Might Be Giants fan club, so I just got sent one of their latest CDs.
Nice.
Yep. So I haven't given up on that either, man. So just because I go digital with my comics doesn't necessarily mean I've got entirely digital with my media.
Merge, you'd be proud of me. In cleaning some stuff up the other week as I'm going through boxes, I found like a shoebox full of tape cassettes. And inside were the Prince Batman soundtrack from 1989, as well as the orchestral soundtrack that went with that. That was kind of neat.
But you don't have the means to play those tapes.
No, I really don't. I don't. I think Carlene's car might have a tape deck in it yet. Mine does not.
I just went to see Purple Rain in the theaters because AMC brought it back after Prince's death, and I went to see it this past. Actually, just yesterday, went to see it and had a very, very good time watching that in the theater with a whole bunch of people.
Sure,
that was an experience. I'd never seen it before.
I've seen it like on HBO. I've never seen it in theater.
Yeah, it was something. Well, Murd, I mean, more the unlimited factor of it is the thing that draws me to it than anything else. Because trust me, if it was up to me, I'd still be going to the shop every week. If only I had unlimited space. Like if I had Indiana Jones,
vault warehouse space.
Yeah, warehouse space. I'd be buying comics every single week. Unfortunately, I live in Brooklyn. Yeah. All right, guys. I think we're up to final thoughts at this point on collecting. So, anything that has not been brought up that you guys were dying to discuss, now would be the time. Mr. Murdough, you got anything?
I wouldn't say there's anything I'm dying to discuss. Only thing I can think of to say it's kind of a depressing note to end on, but I thought it was kind of a worthy metaphor for being a collector of comics these days, and particularly, as I've said, one who, like me, is trying to soldier on in the old paradigm of collecting, trudging to the comic shop every week. It's getting to feel a little bit like those of us who are still trying to do that are like small rodent-like creatures who are trying to subsist in a dry, bleak, desertous ecosystem where there's very little life-giving water to be found, water being the representative of comics here. And the well is slowly running dry.
Spice is life, Murd.
The spice must flow.
Yes.
I get it. Frank Herbert, right? I have a first edition of Dune. I've just never read it. I got like 2 pages into it last summer, but stuff happened.
I watched the documentary for Jodorowsky's Dune, and then shortly thereafter saw the actual Dune in theater, and then immediately after that saw Mad Max Fury Road, and I'm like, wow, in some ways Mad Max Fury Road was the superior Dune movie than the actual one that came out. Shane, you got anything?
The thing that I think of is more so now than ever is buy what you like. Don't cater to what you think you might like. Actually figure out what you like and just stick with that.
Right, that's key to buying either new stuff or old stuff.
Yeah, and I'm all for trying new things. Hey, whatever you want to try it. But really collect what you like. Contrary to 30 years ago when I was a kid and had more what would you say, disposable income.
Sure.
And I would just try to collect things just to collect and have the biggest collection and whatever I could get as much as. Yeah, that doesn't work. It's fine. I know plenty of people that collect in that way, and that's great. That's what they like. That's their hobby. I just can't do that anymore. I have a finite space for things. Again, I'm only 43. I'm already 43, however you want to look at it. But as my imminent mortality approaches, as time moves on, I don't know what my wife or my kids would do with all this stuff because they don't necessarily have an interest in it. So I get what I like as long as I like it. And when I don't like it anymore or I want to shift my collection, I get rid of stuff. I'm much more apt to shift my collection to my needs, which again, it's your collection, so that's what it should be. Yeah. But I'm more free-flowing with it. What comes in, something has to go out. I can't just keep everything anymore. It's just too much. But I think everybody goes through that spurts. Everybody collects stuff, and they have a great time collecting something, whether it be toys or cards or games or anything. You always amass a huge amount of something, and then at some point it becomes different because of either job, family, life in general, and you start shifting things around. So the thing that I would always stress to anybody is collect what you like and do what you like as long as you like it. But don't be afraid to change it or even change your collection to whatever you want to go to next.
Yeah, I couldn't put it better myself. In fact, in today's day and age, even though they're, the comic book fan itself might be a dwindling breed, according to numbers, there is so much out there for just about every single genre for comics. Like, we are at a wealth right now, whether it be from Image, whether it be from Dark Horse, whether it be IDW, whether it be Oni Press, whether it be Marvel, whether it be DC, whether it be Action Lab, whether it be Boom, any publisher you can possibly name. You are bound to find at least one comic book that suits the needs of what you are into.
Yeah.
And if you can find it, cherish it. Because that is the joy that we all take from being comic book fans, is finding that one book that you just keep going back to over and over again and being like, that is my jam. For some people it's going to be Saga. For some people it's going to be Batman. For some people it's going to be Flash. For some people it's going to be a manga. Sorry, Brent. It's just, you're bound to find at least one thing that you can call your own, and go out there and look for it. Whether it be online or whether it be at a comic book shop, there's just a utter wealth of comics out there waiting to be found, and I hope you find the one you're looking for.
Yeah.
That's probably the most profound thing I've ever said on the show. All right.
More uplifting than anything I have to say, Ian.
Hey, Murd, I've heard plenty of profound things out of your mouth. Trust me. Brent, you got anything?
Yeah, I guess just some hip tips to anybody looking to, look into digital or transfer their stuff. What I found, I can only speak for Comixology. That's my platform of choice. Of course, we've heard from Ian about Marvel Unlimited, but I know on Comixology, at least, Marvel has at least 2 sales a week on Mondays and Fridays of 99-cent issues.
Yep.
They've got a multitude of Civil War trade paperbacks going on sale. I don't know how long it is, if it's up until the release of the movie or whatever, but they're all $4.99, $3.99 trades, which can't be beat.
DC tends to have trades too.
DC usually has a trade or some sort of, like, if they do a 201, 301 sale every week that rotate weekly. And then, you'll find The Walking Dead, Image, they'll have sales on there too. So that's a site I check, pretty religiously every day, every 2 days, just to see what's on sale. And that's mostly the stuff I've been buying, is stuff that was on sale that I wanted to read. So just check it out. And if you have a friend that has single issues that you're looking to get their digital codes off of them, see if you can get them off of them. Sure. If they're not using them. Mm-hmm. There are places online that you can go get those too. I'm not going to tell you the places I go, because you're going to be competing with me.
We call that the Deemer method.
Yes. Yes. Well endorsed.
Yep. Has perfected that supply line, hasn't he?
Yes,
Indeed. Yes, indeed. Yeah, and I will also add that eBay and Reddit are 2 lovely places to find digital codes for dirt cheap. Both comiccodes.reddit.com and eBay are still plentiful when it comes to codes. If you want to get a dollar code on an issue, that's the way to go for it. Gentlemen, to steal Mr. Eberle's phrase, even though he's no longer on the call, I believe we've shot our bolt. So any upcoming CGS episodes you want to pimp on the air here?
Well, one of our famous spotlights is coming up pretty soon.
Yeah.
One that Professor Eberle has poured a lot of himself into. It's a spotlight on the Black Panther in celebration of his 50th anniversary, and also his appearance in the upcoming Captain America Civil War film. That is going to be a marathon. He's just sent us the notes for that.
I just got it in an email.
Nice.
They are copious, to say the least. So yeah, that one's going to be a lot of fun. It's a labor of love for him, and we're going to be along for the ride.
Yeah.
I will be listening to that probably on multiple train rides.
Cool.
Fantastic, and anything else on their many episodes? Would you guys just pass 1,600?
Yeah,
That is correct.
Oh boy, jeez.
I was reading on the forums. Also, Pants had posted about the actual number, and I think it was 1890.
Oh my gosh!
Number with counting all kinds of stuff,
All the spin-offs and unnumbered special episodes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So 1603, I think, was the most recent one.
Right you are.
That is insane.
Yeah.
You guys ever going to pull a Marvel and just go to your total number?
They'll say both numbers at the front, like when Fantastic Four would split that.
Different ends, a little red rectangle.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Yep. And Murdough, I'll see you in a week.
That is right. Yes, the day after Free Comic Book Day. It's going to be trip up the Yellow Brick Road to New York to join you and Chris for a showing of The Woodsman.
Nice.
I am looking forward to it. Should be
As
a lot of
am I,
fun.
sir. As am I.
Yep. And Casino, you got any BKs in the vault?
I do not. I should do it.
All right. You should make that happen. But let me straight up say, though, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure having you back on the show.
Yeah, it's been fun.
And I love talking to you guys, and hope to see you in person. I'm seeing Murd soon enough, but Shane, hope to see you in person sooner than later.
Yeah, right back at you. It's been too long.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. We are once again sponsored by DCBS, Discount Comic Book Service at DCBService.com, where you can find discounts, so many discounts, I won't name any of them, DCBService.com. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network over comicspodcast.com and the League of Comic Book Podcasts over comicbooknoise.com/league. Facebook.com/comic timing is where you can find all of your comic timing conversation. And send us an iTunes review on iTunes if you want to, because, hey, we've been around 10 years and we deserve at least one review out of you folks. You hear that? So, for everybody who has been listening to this darn show and been hearing me talk for 10 frickin' years, thank you. That's all I have to say about that, and thank you for not being scared away by Raph. Even though he's not on this episode, his laughter can still be heard. And as always, there's always, and I mean always, probably for at least 10 more years, time for comics.
Hi, Chris. I'm Brent.
Brent, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
This is your 10th anniversary. Is that what this is?
It's Ian's 10th anniversary. I've only been on the show for 8, 9.
But he's been the primary co-host during that time for a long time.
I hold the
8 or 9
world
years
record of comic timing co-hosts. There have been many. There can only be one.
Exactly.
I am drinking some Tennessee honey whiskey with my Dungeons & Dragons 20-sided die ice cube in it. Thanks, Loot Crate. You're fucking useless this month.
I just want to warn you, Murd, this is my longest Twilight ever. It's going to go in it's at least 8 pages long. So
Wow.
Let me be the first listener to say I cannot wait.
Honored. You can look
the
forward.
longest in terms of time?
I've been spending a lot of time on it, yeah. Plus just a lot of reading. And I look forward to addressing what an insolent shit Reginald Hudlin is. So.
Thank you. That was a lot my
Yeah, that was good.
That was awesome, guys. Thank you for coming
Thanks
on.
for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
My absolute pleasure, guys.
Happy to be a part of the anniversary celebration.
Yeah.
Yep, me too.
Eli Stone is dead.
Yes, Eli Stone is dead.
Like Batman's parents. Episode 99.5. You get what you pay for.
Yes, that was me dropping the microphone in disgust.